This hour, then, they are perhaps amongst the most solemn comments from the Ukrainian president in recent weeks. Volodymyr Zelensky acknowledging that Ukraine is facing one of the most difficult moments in its history. The Ukrainian president saying that Kyiv indeed risks breaking with Washington over Donald Trump's plans to end the war. Now, his comments come following reports that the White House is reportedly giving Kyiv until next Thursday to sign the U.S. proposed framework for ending the war. Otherwise, it could cut intelligence sharing and weapons deliveries to the country. This is according to two sources familiar with the matter. Take a listen to Volodymyr Zelensky.
Now is one of the most difficult moments in our history. Ukraine is under more pressure than ever. Ukraine may find itself facing a very difficult choice, either the loss of dignity or the risk of losing a key partner. Either the difficult 28 points or an extremely difficult winter, the most difficult, and further risks. The national Ukrainian interests must be taken into account. We are not making loud statements. We will calmly work with America and all partners. There will be a constructive search for solutions with our main partner.
For a closer look at his comments, then, we're going to cross now to our Ukraine correspondent, Gulliver Cragg, standing by for us in Kyiv. Hi, Gulliver. So this is in many ways being framed as Volodymyr Zelensky rebuffing the Trump administration's proposal. What's your interpretation of his comments? I mean, it certainly sounds like he sees this moment as a decisive one for the future of the war.
Yes, well, you heard him say that we're not going to make any loud statements. And so there is no outright rejection of the Trump administration's proposal in what he's been saying. And I think shivers went down the spines of many Ukrainians hearing the beginning of that address, because Volodymyr Zelensky does make it sound rather as though this is a choice he is considering, the difficult 28 points or the loss of our dignity. Now, you must remember that he is saying this on a day which is designated officially the National Day of Dignity in Ukraine, because it is the anniversary of the start of the protests on Maidan Square in central Kiev, which ultimately in February 2014 toppled the pro-Russian President Viktor Yanukovych and sparked the chain of events that led to the Russian annexation of Crimea, the Russian invasion of Donbass, the war there, and now the war that's going on. It's a very important day, and they decided to call it the Day of Dignity. And I think that Ukrainians actually, once they think about it a bit, understand that when Volodymyr Zelensky says that that's the choice he's facing, he wouldn't use that word on a day like today if he was thinking of choosing the loss of dignity. But as he also has been stressing, it's very, very important for Ukraine not to be accused of being the party that is breaking off the diplomatic negotiations, of not being the party that is an obstacle to peace. So they have to play the game. They have to show themselves to be open to all sorts of discussions. And I think he is very much hoping to have a conversation with President Trump in the near future. But this news of a possible ultimatum from the United States that they might cut intelligence sharing, if this threat is real, and they have done it before, albeit only briefly, but that would be very, very, very bad news for Ukraine. I was just in a press briefing with some of the Ukrainian servicemen who are engaged in deep strikes far into Russian territory using drones. And somebody asked them the question, if the US does cut intelligence and you're not getting the data from them about your targeting, how much of a problem is that going to be for you? And the response was very frank. He said, it's going to be an absolutely enormous, huge problem. We'll try to carry on, he said, we'll do our best, but it will be much, much harder. And these deep strikes into Russian territory, the only real, military success that Ukraine has been having in recent months, I think that they regard that as crucial for preventing Russia from advancing further into Ukraine. As Volodymyr Zelensky's speech went on, it clearly sounded more like fighting talk, that he wasn't going to give in. He said that he'd been delivered ultimatums before, that he'd been told before that if he didn't sign a certain piece of paper, it would be a disaster. He didn't sign it, and Ukraine somehow is still there, and he says he's not going to let Ukraine down. But this is happening at the time when his popularity is at its lowest in all of his perhaps not in the whole of his presidency, but since the full-scale invasion for sure, because of the corruption scandal that erupted last week. And you can also see with all of these calls for national unity and for not allowing anybody to divide Ukrainians, that Volodymyr Zelensky is also hoping somehow that he's going to be able to ride out this political crisis inside the country because of the much bigger geopolitical crisis that Ukraine is facing, meaning that people will feel that they have to rally around him. I clearly think he's that hoping that that will happen. It's not clear from the reactions I'm seeing on social media whether he's actually right in that hope.
Now, Gulliver, I mean, even though this, of course, is not the first time that Ukrainians have seen an ultimatum come from Donald Trump, be it one that puts the ball in Russia's court or in Ukraine, I mean, it does feel like a decisive moment. So what do reactions look like in Ukraine thus far, be it on social media and speaking or hearing from officials? I mean, what's your take on the population's reaction to this ultimatum?
I think people are very, very shocked at the sudden turn of events, because up until just a few days ago, it was looking as though the Trump administration had begun to take a more favorable view towards Ukraine. Donald Trump only a few weeks ago said that he thought that Ukraine actually had what it took to take back all of its occupied territories, the territory occupied by Russia, by force. And so suddenly we're back to the sort of worst fears of the Trump administration putting pressure on Ukraine. The Guardian newspaper has interestingly looked at the text of the 28-point plan as published and noted that there's a lot of clunky phrasing in there. There's a lot of phrasing in there that is obviously directly translated from Russian. The Americans just took dictation from the Russians about what the Russians wanted. People cannot believe it. So there's that reaction. And then there's also the reaction of people being still very critical of Zelensky, that he hasn't made the political changes that they were demanding in order to show that he is taking notice of this corruption scandal and thinking that this style of governance that he has had up till now can't go on with certain people remaining in office. Clearly, he wants to keep them all in office. And I think some people are saying, well, no, Mr. President, we're not going to rally around you if you are not going to make these changes.
Now, Gulliver, it is worth mentioning that there's perhaps a caveat to this ultimatum. We're just hearing now that Donald Trump indeed wants an answer from Volodymyr Zelensky on that peace plan by Thursday, but an extension on finalizing the terms of the deal is indeed possible. So we'll see where this takes us. In the meantime, thank you very much for that update.